My sister's son got drunk at a family gathering and told everyone I was just the sad aunt who buys love. There are words that pierce the soul like broken glass. Words that once spoken cannot be taken back, cannot be forgotten, cannot be easily forgiven. And even if the person who said them later tries to cover them up with empty apologies or excuses of alcohol and youth, those words have already done their work. They have already destroyed something that took years to build. That night, in front of my entire family, my nephew Sebastian raised his glass of red wine, looked me directly in the eyes with that mocking smile only alcohol can produce, and said the words that would change everything. Let's toast to my Aunt Elena, the saddest woman in this family, the one who believes she can buy our love with gifts and favors because no one truly loves her. The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the beat of 30 hearts stopped in time. I saw my mother bring her hand to her chest. I saw my sister Mariana, Sebastian's mother, lower her gaze with a mix of shame and something else I couldn't identify in that moment. I saw my cousins exchanging uncomfortable looks. And I simply stood there by the buffet table I had paid for myself, holding the birthday cake for my father that I had ordered myself, feeling each of my nephew's words pierce my chest like fire. But to understand why those words hurt so much, I need to take you to the beginning. I need to tell you who I am, who I was before that night, and how I came to be the sad aunt who buys love. My name is Elena, and I am 42 years old. I am the youngest of 3 sisters in a traditional Mexican family, where women have always been measured by their ability to build homes, have children, and keep their husbands happy. My older sister Patricia is 48 and has 4 children. My middle sister Mariana is 45 and has 2 children, one of them Sebastian. And then there's me. No husband, no children, without the life I was supposed to have. It's not that I didn't try. God knows I tried with all my heart. I married at 24 to a man named Roberto who seemed perfect on paper, a public accountant, a respectable family, a charming smile. What no one knew, what it took me 3 years to discover, was that Roberto had another family, 150 kilometers away, a wife from his hometown, and 2 small children he visited every time he told me he had work trips. The day I found out, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I simply packed my things in silence while he slept, left the keys to the apartment we had shared on the dining table, and left. I was 27, and felt my life was over. The divorce was quick, because Roberto didn't want to fight. I suppose it was a relief for him to finally stop lying. I went back to my parents' house with a suitcase, a shattered heart, and the feeling that I had failed at the one thing the women in my family were supposedly good at: maintaining a marriage. My sisters were kind at first. They hugged me, told me Roberto was a scoundrel, promised I would find someone better. But as the months passed, and I showed no interest in trying again, their words of support began to transform into something different. Elena, you've been alone for a year. Don't you think you should go out more? I met a coworker of my husband's who is divorced. He's not handsome, but he's a good man. Do you want me to introduce you? At your age, you can't be so picky. The good men are already taken. And my favorite, the one my sister Mariana told me at a family dinner when I was 31. Elena, I don't want to be cruel, but you have to accept you'll probably end up alone. And that's okay. Some women just aren't made for marriage. Those words, said with that false compassion that only sisters know how to use as a weapon, marked me more than I want to admit. But instead of breaking down, I decided to build something different. If I wasn't going to have the life expected of me, then I would have a life that made me happy in my own way. I focused on my career. I worked for 5 years as an administrative assistant while studying at night, and eventually got my degree in business administration. At 34, I started my own business, a small travel agency specializing in tour packages for seniors. The market was niche, but I knew it well, because I had spent years organizing trips for my parents and their friends. The business grew slowly at first, but with dedication and hard work, it eventually prospered. By 38, I had paid off the mortgage on my small apartment, had considerable savings, and could afford luxuries I never imagined: travel, nice clothes, a new car. But more important than all of that, I had independence, I had freedom, I had a life I had built with my own hands. And that's when I began to do what my nephew would call buying love. It all started innocently enough. My nephew Sebastian, Mariana's oldest son, was about to turn 15 and wanted a big party. My sister and her husband Rodrigo were going through financial troubles. Rodrigo had lost his job 6 months earlier, and Mariana, who had never worked outside the home, had no income of her own. When I saw the sadness in Sebastian's eyes upon hearing his party would have to be small, something moved in my heart. "Let me help," I told my sister. "I'll pay for the party." Mariana resisted at first, more out of pride than anything else, but she eventually accepted, and Sebastian's 15th birthday party was spectacular. We rented a hall, hired a live band, had food for 100 people, and when Sebastian hugged me that night and said, "Thank you, Aunt Elena, you're the best," I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like I belonged, that I was important, that my existence had value beyond my marital status. That was the beginning. Then came Sebastian's school tuition when Rodrigo still hadn't found steady work, then school supplies, then the secondary school graduation trip, then enrollment in a private high school because the public school in his area had a bad reputation. With each thing I paid for, I told myself I was doing it out of love, that Sebastian was like the son I never had, that helping my family was the right thing to do, that money was no good if you couldn't use it to make the people you love happy. But there was something else, something I struggled to admit, even to myself. Every time I paid for something, every time I solved an economic problem for my family, I felt I was earning my place at the table. I felt I was justifying my existence. I felt that, although I had no husband or children, although I hadn't met the expectations society and my family had for me, at least I was useful, at least I was needed. And my family, consciously or unconsciously, took advantage of that need. It wasn't just Sebastian. There was also his younger sister Valentina, Mariana's 13-year-old daughter, for whom I paid for ballet lessons for 4 years. There were the children of my sister Patricia, to whom I gave money for their university projects, their exchange trips, their first cars. There was my mother, whom I took to Europe when she turned 70, because she had always dreamed of seeing Paris. There was my father, whose heart medications I paid for every month, because his pension wasn't enough. In the last 10 years, I estimate I spent more than 2 million pesos on my family. I don't say this with resentment, or at least I didn't before that night. I say it as a fact. As a reality I built myself with each bank transfer, each signed check, each swiped credit card. And during all those years, I convinced myself I was doing it out of love, that my family was grateful, that we were close, that Sebastian loved me like a second mother. How blind I was. The signs were there, of course. They were always there, but I chose not to see them. Like the time I organized a dinner at my apartment for my mother's birthday and Sebastian, who was 19 at the time, arrived 2 hours late without apologizing. When I asked why he hadn't called, he looked at me with annoyance and said, "Relax, Aunt, it's not a big deal." Or the time I lent him my car for a weekend so he could go to the beach with his friends, and he returned it with an empty tank, the interior full of sand, and a dent in the rear bumper he never explained or offered to pay for. Or the times, increasingly frequent, when he would ask to borrow money that we both knew he would never return. 500 pesos here, 1,000 there, 3,000 for an important project that never materialized. Or the way he stopped hugging me when he saw me at family gatherings. The way he responded to my text messages with monosyllables, or increasingly often didn't respond at all. The way he talked about me with his cousins when he thought I couldn't hear, imitating my voice, mocking how I was always trying to be the cool aunt. But I justified everything. I told myself it was his age, that 23-year-olds are like that he would eventually mature and go back to being the sweet boy who hugged me and told me I was the best aunt in the world. I never imagined what he really thought of me would come to light at my father's 75th birthday party, in front of the whole family, after 3 glasses of red wine and half a liter of tequila. The party was at Patricia's house, my older sister, because her house was the biggest and could accommodate the almost 40 of us. I, as always, had offered to pay for the catering, the cake, and the drinks. I had also bought a special gift for my father, an antique pocket watch I had seen in an antique shop, and knew he would love because he had collected watches for as long as I could remember. I arrived early to help with the preparations. I set up the tables, blew up balloons, arranged the centerpieces I had specially ordered for the occasion. My sister Patricia supervised everything with a critical eye, pointing out things here and there that needed to be moved or changed, but without getting her hands dirty. Mariana arrived an hour later with Rodrigo, Sebastian, and Valentina. The four of them sat in the living room waiting while Patricia and I finished preparing everything. I noticed Sebastian already had a glass of wine when he arrived. I didn't think much of it. He was an adult, after all. He could drink if he wanted. Guests started arriving at 4 in the afternoon. Uncles, cousins, old neighbors, lifelong friends of my parents. The garden filled with laughter, conversation, and the aroma of the food the catering service had prepared. My father, seated in the place of honor, looked happier than I had seen him in years. My mother, at his side, held his hand with that tenderness only 75 years of love can produce. For a moment I forgot the insecurities. I forgot the constant feeling of not belonging. I looked at my gathered family, heard the laughter, saw the hugs, and allowed myself to feel I was part of all this, that my contribution mattered, that I was exactly where I should be. How little that illusion lasted. The problem started around 7 in the evening, when the sun was setting and the first stars appeared in the sky. We had already eaten, already sung Las Mañanitas. Already my father had opened his gifts amidst laughter and tears of emotion. The party was at that sweet moment where everyone is satisfied and content, where conversations flow easily and the atmosphere is one of genuine happiness. I was in the kitchen supervising the serving of coffee and dessert, when I heard Sebastian's voice from the garden. He was talking loudly, as people who have drunk too much do, and something in his tone made me stop and listen. "No, seriously," he was saying, slightly slurring his words. "My Aunt Elena is a case. Have you noticed how she always has to be the center of attention, as if by buying things she could make us love her more?" I felt a sudden chill in my stomach. I approached the kitchen door, keeping out of sight, but close enough to hear. "Don't be like that, Sebas," said a voice I recognized as my cousin Lucia's. "Your aunt has been very generous with you." "Generous," repeated Sebastian with a mocking tone that chilled my blood. "That's the word you all use. I call it desperate. The woman is alone, has nothing, and thinks if she showers us with gifts we'll forget she's the family's sad spinster." The laughter that followed was sparse, uncomfortable, but it existed. I heard laughter. Members of my own family laughing at my nephew's cruel words. I should have gone out then. I should have confronted the situation, defended my dignity, put Sebastian in his place, but I couldn't. My legs wouldn't respond. My throat was closed. I could only stand there, paralyzed, listening to the boy I had loved and helped for years destroy me with his words. "The worst part," Sebastian continued, clearly encouraged by his audience's reactions, "is that she thinks we don't notice. She thinks we're stupid. As if we didn't know every gift comes with a guilt fee. As if we didn't know she expects us to adore her in return." "Calm down, Sebastian," said another voice. "I think it was my Uncle Jorge. You're drunk and you're going to say something you'll regret." "Regret? What? For telling the truth?" "Someone has to say it. My Aunt Elena is pathetic. A woman in her 40s who couldn't keep a marriage, has no children, has nothing except money, and thinks with that she can buy a family." It was then that my sister Mariana intervened, but not in the way I expected. "Sebastian, lower your voice," she said, but her tone wasn't one of reproach, it was one of concern. Concern that I might hear, not concern for what her son was saying, but concern that I might find out. That distinction broke my soul. I left the kitchen. I don't know where I got the strength, but I left. I walked into the garden where Sebastian was still pontificating about my pathetic existence, and when he saw me he had the decency to be quiet for a second. But only for a second. "Look who's here," he said, raising his wine glass toward me. "The guest of honor. The woman who paid for all this. Were you expecting applause, Aunt? A medal?" "Sebastian, that's enough," said my father, rising from his chair with difficulty. "It's my birthday and I won't allow—" "No, Grandpa. Let me finish," interrupted Sebastian. "Everyone here thinks the same thing, but no one has the courage to say it. My Aunt Elena is the saddest woman in this family, a woman who believes she can buy love because no one truly loves her." The silence that followed was absolute. 40 people holding their breath, 40 pairs of eyes looking at me, waiting for my reaction. And I, for the first time in my life, had no words. It was my mother who broke the silence. She got up from her chair, walked towards Sebastian, and with all the strength of her 73 years, slapped him so hard it echoed throughout the garden. "How dare you," said my mother, with a voice I had never heard from her. "How dare you speak to your aunt like that after all she has done for you? Who do you think paid for your school? Who do you think paid for your trips? Who do you think has been there every time your father couldn't provide for his family?" Sebastian touched his cheek, genuinely surprised by the slap, but the alcohol wouldn't let him process the situation correctly. "See, Grandma? That's exactly what I'm saying. We always have to be grateful. We always have to kneel before the great Alina who saves us with her money. Don't you think that's sick? Don't you think that's sad?" "What's sad," said my mother, "is that we raised you to be ungrateful. That's what's sad." Mariana finally got up from her chair and took Sebastian by the arm. "Come on, son. Let's go inside. You need water, and—" "No, Mom," said Sebastian, pulling away. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of acting like Aunt Elena is a saint when we all know she only does these things to feel better about herself. It's selfishness disguised as generosity." And then, perhaps because the alcohol had finally destroyed any filter that remained, Sebastian turned to me and said the words that still haunt me. "Do you want to know the truth, Aunt Elena? No one asked you to help us. No one asked you to pay for anything. You did it because you're empty, because your life has no meaning, and you need to feel someone needs you. But here's the secret. Everyone knows except you. We don't need you. We never needed you. And if you disappeared tomorrow, the only thing we'd miss is your money." I don't know how to describe what I felt in that moment. It was as if someone had opened a trap door beneath my feet, and I was falling into an infinite void. Each of Sebastian's words was a blow, but the worst, the absolutely devastating part, was that a part of me believed he was right. Hadn't I thought those things myself in my darkest moments? Hadn't I wondered 1,000 times if my family really loved me or just tolerated me for my money? Hadn't I felt deep in my heart that I was buying something that should be free? Sebastian, in his cruel, drunken honesty, had said my worst fears out loud. The rest of the night is blurry in my memory. I remember my father asked Sebastian to leave. I remember Mariana and Rodrigo took him away, with Mariana giving me a look I couldn't interpret. Was it an apology? Embarrassment? Or was there some agreement in her eyes? I remember my mother hugged me and told me Sebastian was drunk. He didn't know what he was saying. He would regret it and apologize tomorrow. I remember I nodded, although I didn't believe a single word. I remember I stayed until the end of the party, helping to clean up, acting as if nothing had happened, because that's what I had always done. That's what I had always been, the one who helped, the one who facilitated, the one who put others' needs before her own. But when I arrived at my apartment that night, something had changed. Something inside me had broken that I wasn't sure I could repair. I sat in my living room, in the silence of my empty home, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to ask the question I had always avoided. Was Sebastian right? Was I really as pathetic as he said? I looked around. My apartment was nice, tastefully decorated, full of souvenirs from my travels, but it was empty. There were no photos of children on the walls, no toys on the floor, no other voice but mine, no other heartbeat but mine. Had I used my money to buy love? Perhaps, probably. But did that make me a bad person? Was it wrong to want to feel you belonged somewhere, that you mattered to someone? The tears came then, the ones I had held back all night. I cried as I hadn't cried since my divorce. I cried for the public humiliation. I cried for my nephew's words. But above all, I cried for the loneliness, for the undeniable reality that despite all my money, all my success, all my supposed independence, the days that followed were strange. My phone was surprisingly quiet. I expected calls, messages, some attempt at an apology or at least an explanation, but nothing came. My mother called me once, 3 days later, to make sure I was okay. She told me Sebastian felt bad about what he had said, but was too embarrassed to call me. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up. Mariana didn't call. Not once. Not a message. Not a WhatsApp. Nothing. Patricia sent me a brief message. "I hope you're okay. Sebastian was very drunk. You know he doesn't really think that." I didn't reply. For the first few weeks I threw myself into work. I had a high season at the travel agency, and that gave me the perfect excuse not to think, not to feel, not to process. I spent 12-14 hours a day in the office. I would come home exhausted, pour myself a glass of wine, watch TV without really seeing anything, and fall asleep on the sofa. But you can't run from yourself forever. A month after my father's party, I received a message from Mariana, the first in 30 days. It said, "Hello Elena, can we meet for coffee? I need to talk to you." My first instinct was to ignore it, but something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps hope, perhaps a simple need to close that chapter, made me respond. We agreed to meet at a cafe near her house, a neutral place where neither of us had an advantage. I arrived first, as always. I sat at a table by the window and ordered an American coffee I didn't plan to drink. When Mariana walked in, I was surprised at how tired she looked. She had aged in a month. Or maybe I just never really stopped to look at her. She sat across from me without hugging me, without the false effusiveness that usually characterized our encounters. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I didn't have much choice," I replied. "You're my sister." The silence that followed was awkward, heavy with all the words that hadn't been said for a month. "Sebastian wants to apologize," Mariana finally said, "but he doesn't know how." "Does he want to apologize, or do you want him to apologize?" Mariana lowered her gaze. "Elena, what he said was wrong. Very wrong. But you have to understand he was drunk and—" "No," I interrupted. "I won't listen to that excuse again. Alcohol doesn't create thoughts, Mariana. It just removes filters. Sebastian said what he really thinks of me. The alcohol just gave him the courage to say it out loud. It's not like that." "It's not? Are you telling me my nephew, the same one who has mocked me behind my back for years, the same one who has asked me for money with no intention of paying it back, the same one who stopped hugging me when he turned 16, are you telling me that Sebastian actually appreciates me and was just talking drunken nonsense?" Mariana didn't respond. Her silence was more eloquent than any words. "That's what I thought," I said. "Elena, you have to understand our position," Mariana began. Something in her tone alerted me I was about to hear something I wouldn't like. "These years have been hard for us. Rodrigo lost his job. I've never worked. The children have needs. I know. I've been there. I've helped. Yes, and we're grateful. But, Mariana took a breath, as if preparing for something. "But sometimes your help feels like an imposition, as if by helping us, you're constantly reminding us that we're less than you, that we depend on you, that without you we couldn't survive." I looked at her, genuinely surprised by her words. "Are you telling me my help bothers you?" "It doesn't bother exactly. It's just that, Elena, you don't have children. You don't understand what it's like to have to provide for a family. When you offer to pay for my children's things, I feel like you're telling me I'm a bad mother, that Rodrigo is a bad provider, that our family is a failure. I never meant for you to feel that." "I know, but that's how we feel. And Sebastian grew up with that. He grew up knowing his aunt paid for his things because his parents couldn't. Do you think that doesn't affect him? Do you think it doesn't embarrass him?" Something began to click in my mind, a puzzle that had always been there but whose pieces I never wanted to see. "So," I said slowly, processing her words, "what you're telling me is that what Sebastian feels for me isn't ingratitude. It's resentment." Mariana didn't respond, but her silence was confirmation enough. "He resents me for helping him." "It's not that simple." "Yes it is, Mariana. Yes it is. Your son hates me because I gave him things his parents couldn't give him, and instead of seeing me as someone who loved him and wanted the best for him, he saw me as a constant humiliation, as a reminder of his family's failures." Tears began to form in Mariana's eyes, but something in me had hardened, something that could no longer be moved by tears. "And you?" I asked. "Did you resent me too?" "Elena, you're my sister. I love you." "That doesn't answer my question." Mariana stayed silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally she looked up, and I saw it. The truth. It was there, in her eyes, clear as water. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Sometimes I did." I got up from the table. I had nothing more to say. Nothing more to listen to. My sister, the same one who had accepted my help for years, the same one who had let me pay for her children's education, her family's vacations, medical emergencies, birthdays, and Christmases, that sister resented me for helping her. Alina. Wait. No, Mariana. There's nothing more to talk about. What are you going to do? I stopped at the cafe door and turned to her. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to stop buying love. I left that cafe and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I needed to move, to process, to understand what I had just learned. Had my years of generosity been an imposition? Had I confused love with control? Had I been so desperate to belong that I didn't see the damage I was causing? I had no answers, only questions and a deep pain I didn't know how to handle. 3 months passed. 3 months in which I didn't speak to Mariana, to Sebastian, or to anyone in that branch of my family. My mother called from time to time, worried about the division, but I assured her I was okay, that I just needed space. Patricia tried to mediate once, but when I told her what Mariana had said at the cafe, she fell silent. Did you know? I asked. Did you know they felt that way? Alina, it's complicated. No, it's not. Did you know? I knew something, but I thought it was normal jealousy between sisters. I didn't imagine it was that deep. Jealousy. That was another word I hadn't considered. Were they jealous of me? Did they envy my independence, my money, my freedom? While they were trapped in marriages that limited them, and families that consumed them, did they envy the single sister who could do whatever she wanted? The irony was almost comical. I had spent years envying their lives, their husbands, their children, their sense of belonging, and they had spent years envying mine. We all wanted what we didn't have. We all thought the other was happier. It was during those 3 months of reflection that I began to make changes. First small, then bigger ones. I started going to therapy. For the first time in my life, I sat in front of someone whose job was to listen to me without judgment, and I told her everything. My failed marriage. My feeling of not belonging. My need to buy affection. Sebastian's words. Mariana's confession. My therapist, a woman in her 60s named Carmen, helped me see patterns I had never identified alone. Elena, she told me, in one of our sessions, you've spent your life trying to earn your family's love. But love isn't earned. Love is given and received. There is no transaction. But if I don't help them, what do I have to offer? That's exactly the question you need to ask yourself. What do you have to offer besides money? And more importantly, what do you want to receive besides gratitude? I didn't know how to answer. The problem, Carmen continued, is that you've built your identity around being useful. You're the one who helps, who solves, who pays. But underneath that, who are you really? That question haunted me for weeks. Who was I without my money, without my generosity, without my role as the family savior? I began to explore. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned years before. I started painting, something I had loved as a young woman but gave up when I got married, because Roberto thought it was a waste of time. I enrolled in a ceramics class on Saturday mornings. I began reading for pleasure, not just business books but novels, poetry, anything that fed my soul. And something began to change, slowly, imperceptibly at first, but undeniably later. I began to enjoy my own company. I began to value my solitude, not as a punishment but as a space of freedom. I began to understand that being alone didn't mean being incomplete. One Saturday in my ceramics class, I met a woman named Sophia. She was 50, divorced like me, childless like me, and had an energy I found magnetic from the first moment. First time with ceramics? She asked, as we both struggled with the wheel. Yes, I'm terrible. Me too. But the point isn't to be good. The point is to get your hands dirty. We became friends, not one of those superficial friendships based on convenience or proximity, but one of those deep friendships where you can be completely yourself. Sophia listened to my story without judging me. She told me hers, equally complicated, equally painful. And in that exchange of vulnerabilities, I found something I hadn't found in my family: unconditional acceptance. You know what your problem is? She told me one day, as we drank wine in her apartment. You confuse need with love. Your family needed you, but that doesn't mean they loved you. And you confused that need with love because you were desperate to feel loved. And now, what do? Now you learn to love yourself, to give yourself what you expected others to give you. And when you manage that, you'll be able to relate to your family from a different place, not from need, but from choice. 6 months after my father's party, I got a call from Mariana. Sebastian was in the hospital. My first instinct was to run, a lifetime of being the one who helps, who solves, who shows up when there are problems, pushed me to go immediately. But something stopped me. What happened? I asked, with a calm that surprised even me. He had a car accident. He was driving drunk. He crashed into a pole 3 blocks from our house. Is it serious? He has a broken leg and some fractured ribs. The doctors say he'll have to be in the hospital for at least 2 weeks. I waited for Mariana to say what she really wanted to say, what she always said when she called me. Elena, the insurance doesn't cover everything, and we can't pay the difference. I thought maybe… There it was, the real reason for the call. No, I said. Excuse me? I said no, Mariana. I'm not going to pay. The silence on the other end of the line was long. Elena, he's your nephew. He's hurt. I know, and I'm sorry, but I can't keep being his safety net. I can't keep rescuing him every time he makes bad decisions. This is different. Is it different? Why? Because now you really need me? Because now the money you so resented is convenient? That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Mariana? That my nephew called me pathetic in front of the whole family. That you told me my help was a humiliation. That for years you accepted my money while despising me behind my back. That's not fair. I heard Mariana sob on the other end of the line. Elena, please. I'll go to the hospital to see Sebastian, because despite everything, I love him, but I won't pay a single peso, not anymore. I hung up the phone with my hands shaking, but with a strange feeling in my chest. It was as if a weight I had carried for years had finally lifted. I went to the hospital that afternoon. I found Sebastian in a shared room, his leg in a cast and elevated, his face full of superficial cuts. When he saw me come in, he had the decency to look ashamed. Aunt Elena, he said, with a voice more humble than I had heard in years. I sat in the chair next to his bed and looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the boy he had been, the teenager he had become, the young adult now facing the consequences of his choices. Sebastian, I said, we need to talk. I know, Aunt. What I said at Grandpa's party was wrong. I know, but I'm not here to hear apologies you don't mean. I do mean them. Really. Do you mean them because you hurt someone who loves you, or because now you need something from me? Sebastian didn't respond immediately. I watched him process my words, struggle between honesty and convenience. I don't know, he finally said. Probably both. The honesty took me by surprise. It was the first time in a long time. Sebastian was genuinely honest with me. Thank you for not lying to me, I said. Aunt, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you, but I need you to understand something. I'm listening. Everything I said that night, it wasn't about you. It was about me, about my shame, about my frustration at never being able to give my family anything, always depending on others, feeling like a failure at 23. You were an easy target. You were there, being successful, being generous, being everything I wasn't, and instead of admitting I admired you, I attacked you. Tears began to fall down my face, not from sadness, but from something more complex, relief perhaps, or understanding. That doesn't justify what you said, I said. I know. Nothing justifies it. But I wanted you to know the truth. You're not pathetic, Aunt. You never were. The pathetic one here is me. We stayed silent for a long moment. Outside I heard the noise of the hospital, footsteps in the hallways, machines beeping, distant voices. Inside that room, something was changing. I'm not going to pay for your hospital stay, I finally said. Not this one, nor the ones to come if you keep making stupid decisions like driving drunk. I understand. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I've learned that love isn't bought or sold. It means I love you enough to let you face your own consequences. Sebastian nodded, with tears in his own eyes. Can we start over? He asked. No money involved? Just you and me? I thought about the question. I thought about the years of resentment, of misunderstandings, of love disguised as transactions. I thought about the pain we had both caused and suffered. We can try, I said. But it will take time. Whatever time you need, Aunt. I'll wait. That was the beginning of something new. Not a fairy tale happy ending where everything magically resolves, but the start of a long and often painful process of reconstruction. Sebastian left the hospital with a considerable debt that his parents had to negotiate with the hospital to pay in installments. It was hard for everyone, but it was also the first time in years that Mariana's family faced a problem without my financial rescue. And something interesting happened. Rodrigo, Mariana's husband, got a new job 3 months later. It wasn't his dream job, but it paid the bills. Mariana started giving private English lessons to help with expenses. Sebastian, after recovering, found a part-time job while finishing his degree. It wasn't easy. There were moments of tension, resentment, longing for the times when I would show up with my checkbook ready to solve any problem. But there was also something else. Dignity. The dignity of solving their own problems, of standing on their own 2 feet, of not depending on anyone else. My relationship with Sebastian gradually improved. Without money in the mix, we had to find other ways to connect. I discovered my nephew was funny, intelligent, with a sharp sense of humor that made me laugh. He discovered his aunt wasn't just a walking checkbook, but a person with opinions, stories, and interests of her own. A year after my father's party, Sebastian invited me to dinner, just him and me, no one else. "I want to show you something," he said, as we walked to a small restaurant near his university. He took me to a table where there was an envelope. Inside was cash. "What is this?" I asked. "It's 500 pesos. It's all I've managed to save from my job. It's the first payment for everything I owe you." "Sebastian, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I need to do it. Not for you, but for me. I need to know I can pay you even if it's little by little, even if it takes me years." I looked at the envelope, then at my nephew. I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Pride. Not the false pride of a wounded ego, but the genuine pride of someone taking responsibility for their life. "Okay," I said, accepting the envelope, "but on one condition." "What?" "That every time you make a payment, we have dinner together. Not out of obligation, just because I want to spend time with you." Sebastian smiled, the first genuine smile he had directed at me in years. "Deal, Aunt." 3 years have passed since that night at my father's birthday party. 3 years since Sebastian called me the sad aunt who buys love. 3 years that have transformed me in ways I never imagined possible. My relationship with my family is different now. Not better or worse, just different. I'm no longer the one who pays for everything. I'm no longer the one who solves everything. I'm no longer the one who shows up with excessive gifts, looking for love in return. Mariana and I have reached a kind of peace. We're not close like we were before, but there's no resentment either. We see each other at family gatherings, talk about superficial things, wish each other well. It's not much, but it's honest. Patricia, my older sister, has become curiously closer. Perhaps because she too was tired of the roles we all played. Perhaps because she saw in my transformation something she also needed. My parents are still my parents, loving in their own way, traditional in their expectations, sometimes confused by the changes in their youngest daughter. My father still doesn't understand why I stopped paying for the Christmas dinner. My mother still asks me when I'm going to find someone. But I love them, and I know they love me, and that's enough. Sebastian graduated last year. He invited me to his ceremony, introduced me to his friends as my Aunt Elena, the strongest person I know. When I asked him why that adjective, he said, "Because you had the courage to let us fall so we could learn to get up on our own." He's still paying me back for what he feels he owes me. At 500 pesos a month, it will take him decades, but that doesn't matter. What matters are the dinners we share every time he hands me an envelope. The conversations we have, the relationship we're building from scratch. As for me, I found something I didn't know I was looking for: peace. The peace of knowing who I am without needing others to define me. The peace of valuing myself for what I am, not for what I can give. The peace of being alone without feeling lonely. Sophia is still my friend. We've traveled together to 3 countries, taken more ceramics classes than I can count, laughed and cried and shared our lives in ways I never shared with my sisters. My business is still thriving. My apartment is still my refuge. My life is still mine. Am I happy? It's a complicated question. I have good days and bad days. I have moments of loneliness and moments of fullness. I have fears and hopes, doubts and certainties. But I no longer feel like the sad aunt who buys love. I feel like Elena, simply Elena, a 45-year-old woman who has learned through blows and scars that true love is not bought or sold, that genuine relationships are built with time, honesty, and vulnerability, that being alone is not a failure, and that belonging to yourself is the first condition for belonging to anyone else. Sebastian was right that night, though not in the way he believed. I was buying love. I was so empty, so in need of validation, that I confused transactions with emotions. But he was wrong about something crucial. It wasn't because no one loved me. It was because I didn't love myself. Now I love myself, with my flaws and my virtues, with my loneliness and my independence, with my complicated past and my uncertain future. I love myself enough not to need to buy anyone's affection. And that, perhaps, is the greatest wealth I have ever had. If you are reading this and identify with my story, if you too have felt you have to earn your family's love, if you too have confused generosity with a need for validation, I want you to know something: you are not alone. You are not alone. But I also want you to know there is another way to live, a way where love flows freely, without conditions or transactions, a way where you can give because you want to, not because you need to be loved in return. Finding that way isn't easy. It requires work, therapy, moments of intense pain and transformations that leave you breathless. It requires facing truths about yourself you'd rather not see. But in the end, it's worth it. Because in the end, the only person whose love you really need is your own. And that love, that true and deep love for who you are, no one can take from you. No one can buy it. And no one, not even a drunk nephew at a family party, can tell you that you don't deserve it. Because you deserve it. We all do. We just have to learn to give it to ourselves. This is my story. It's not an ending, but a semicolon. Life continues. Relationships evolve. Wounds heal, even if scars remain. But if I've learned anything in these years, it's that the most important chapter of your life is the one you write yourself, not the one your family writes for you, not the one society expects you to write, but the one you, with your own hands, your own voice, your own heart, decide to tell. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And if you have your own story of love, pain, betrayal, or redemption, I hope you find the courage to tell it, because our stories matter, each one of them.